right, I'm Jacob, if you don't know that already. But when Alex reached out and asked if I would help, and I went over the material we were going over tonight, which is 2 Corinthians chapter 8, I kind of just thought back on my history of service and volunteering. So I'm going to share that very briefly with you. So I grew up in a Christian household where service was encouraged and almost expected. Both of my parents, they've always served for as long as I could remember, with my dad helping lead worship, and my mom has always been in the children's ministry. So, growing up, I've always had a great example as to what service is and what it should be. Around middle school is when I first jumped into service, and I helped out in the kids ministry. So I would help out with the 3-year-olds sometimes, and I would go to the 5th and 6th graders sometimes, and at first I was really excited, really enthusiastic about what I was doing because, I was finally doing my part and helping serve and just being that person that helps. It's always great to see. But after a while, I started to get burnt out. I did it for a few years. I would do it twice a month, and, that desire, that motivation to keep serving and helping others, it was just kind of fizzling out. And about halfway through my high school experience, I stopped serving, and I just went to church, and, it was all right. I would come in, and I would just be a consumer, I'd take in the sermon, I would leave, and that was that. It wasn't until this summer, actually, that I kind of jumped back into that. My former youth pastor reached out and asked if I would be interested in serving in the youth group. So since I hadn't done it in a while, I said, sure, why not? And so I met up with him, and I found out that I was going to be working with the middle school boys. Now, if you know of a middle school boy or have been a middle school boy, you know that their attention span is very low, and their maturity is very low as well. So the idea of having to, talk through Bible questions about a lesson that we went over with a bunch of middle schoolers did not seem appealing at all. But, I already signed up for it, and I was like, well, I guess we'll give it a try, right? So I go in the first time, and it turns out how I'd expect it to be. I try to engage with them, ask questions. Of course, their attention is not there, and they're talking about playing sports and what they did during the week, and, it is what it is, right? So I was like, well, I can keep doing this, or I can quit. And at the time, I was like, I'm only starting out, so I got to keep trying, right? And that's what I did. So over the coming weeks, I kept going. I kept engaging with them. I got to know the boys a lot better, and lo and behold, as I got to know them better, I would see glimpses where they weren't, completely disengaged, but they would be answering the questions, They'd be engaged. It sounded like they were actually listening, And, as that happened, I was, more encouraged and more enthusiastic about what I was doing there. Because jumping into it, I was thinking, I'm not really going to get anything out of this. I don't think they are, because they're not paying attention, right? But as I was able to connect with them and get to know them, I was really seeing the results, and I was seeing the results in them and myself as well, because I started to see that what I was doing had a purpose. And, God called me to do something to be able to help these boys to learn, because at the beginning, I don't think they knew much, but, as we've gone on, they've picked up. So just looking back at the passage and my story, I was really reminded of my story, reading through Paul and what all of the reminders that he had about enthusiastic giving. At the beginning, he talks about the Macedonian churches, being super poor, not really having much to give, but they gave everything that they had severely. They did it enthusiastically and with everything they had. And then the biggest example would be Jesus, right? He left his perfect abode up in heaven to come down to earth and to sacrifice everything for us. And, just seeing those two examples, along with Titus, just being there, enthusiastic, ready to help serve, like give the money where it needs to go and keep this mission going, Just throughout this whole passage, there are these reminders to keep being enthusiastic about how we serve. And, that's one of the big things that I got from this passage, is that God calls us to serve, and he calls us to do it enthusiastically. If we're going to serve and we're not really into it, we're not going to get much from it. And odds are the people we're serving, they aren't either, because they're going to pick up on that energy and how you're feeling, and, they might not really get much from it. But, God calls us to be enthusiastic about where he puts us and what we're doing. So I guess I would just recommend that to find something that you find enjoyable and you have a desire to do, and you help serve in that capacity, because, only good things come from enthusiastic service. That's really all I have, so.